All right, what up, everybody? I am at the spot. This is Plan Your Greatness, and I am your gracious host, Carlton Hamilton. And let's get right to it. All right, we are now on chapter 9. Chapter nine's title is Open Letters. And before we get started in that, let's go ahead and get with the weigh in so I can keep you guys updated, keep myself accountable. I weighed in earlier today at 247. I had actually gotten down to about 241 and a half from the cleanse. Yes, I recommend everyone gets it, but it's a little, it's a challenge. But I think everyone should get one at least once or twice a year. Unless you are really one of those individuals that's really eating clean. If you're not eating, I mean like seriously clean, then you probably could use, a colonic cleanse, which really is just a fancy name for an enema. So I'm getting a professional enema. All right, so we are at chapter 9. Chapter 9 title is Open Letters. Let me center myself. There we go. Oh, hold on. Right there. All right, open letters. Okay, this chapter I write 3 specific letters. One to my nephew, one to my son, and one to my 15-year-old self. Very powerful moments in my life. I thought it was needed because a lot of times you're needing to apologize, you're needing to maybe clear some things out. So I was able to do that. Now, just giving you a little heads up, what inspired me to write that was in James Baldwin's book, The Fire Next Time. In this book, he actually starts out by writing a letter. It's like an introduction to his nephew, basically letting him know this is the world you're about to enter into. And so that inspired me to write the letter to my nephew, who was complaining about where he was in life and who basically was responsible for that. And so what I do is I break it down for him, and I'm just going to go through the points that I talked about specifically in this letter. And first of all, I let him know, I said, my journey is your journey. Because I said, I'm about to tell you, I'm about to share with you my story. Very similar to yours. I had some issues with my dad. So I share that with him. And then what I also share with him is that I believe there are 3 truths. And I took this from a show called The School of Greatness by Lewis Hall. Shout out to Lewis. He always asks his guests, what 3 things would you tell people if you were on your deathbed and there was nothing else you would be able to leave to the world? And I thought about that for a while as he was talking to all his guests. And I said the number 1 thing is parents have the most important responsibility in the world. I said you'll either raise a world builder or you'll raise a world destroyer. And that's what I'm sharing with my nephew is that, yes, our parents dropped the ball. Okay, my parents dropped the ball. Their parents probably dropped the ball, and see how they were just continuing. And my sister, your mother, and her father dropped the ball. Okay, we acknowledge that. Okay, so I was explaining to him real quickly. I said, they programmed us, but they don't control us. So since they don't control us, we have the ability to change. That's a whole different process, questions, everything, but we have the ability to do that. Also, I shared with him, I said, they're not coming back. I had to learn that understanding with my father. He's not going to come back to apologize, and he's not going to come back and give me something that I may have felt that he had taken away. And even if he did, what would I do with that? And so I go continue to ask the question, and these are things I had to ask myself. I said, did the anger, did the resentment and everything, did it empower me? And I'll share with that later. I know it didn't. So I'm asking my nephew, has that empowered you? Has that sulking, pouting, all this stuff, has that empowered you? And just think about that. Understand that your life is complete with or without them. Move on. I know I'm saying it easy, but there's other videos where I'll talk specifically about how do you go about that process. But understand that your life is complete with or without them. Okay. Understand there's a difference between what ought to be and what is. I had to come to that realization of who I thought I wanted my father to be, or who I thought he should be, and what he actually is. Once I understood that this is what my dad is, then I didn't have these unrealistic expectations of what I believe he should be. And I'm saying that to my nephew. Know that your dad is what he is. All right? Now, what have you learned from all of that? All of the life experiences that you went through and everything all up until this point. What have you learned? And then more specifically, can you apply that to make your life better now? All right? Now, the other thing is just understanding that there's three spaces in life. There's past, there's present, and there's future. Okay? So, if that past cannot be changed and will not be changed, okay, what can you do with what you learned from that past? And how can you apply it to making something better out of your life in the future? Because if you don't, you end up staying in this past ideology. And typically when people start talking about the past, they've not moved, they've not grown. You're really hanging on memories. They may be good or bad. You're hanging on blame. You're blaming people for. Usually, if you're doing that, you're just figuring that because of that you can't be here. Okay, or it's inhibiting something. So you're working off the memory off your past. You're blaming others. You're seeing yourself as a victim. You don't see yourself as having control over your present situation and what you're trying to create. Makes you helpless. Makes you hopeless. And in a lot of cases, those thoughts make you sick. All right. Viktor Frankl, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, and I've used this book a bunch of times, and that is what he talked about was he said, let me go ahead and pull up the quote. Viktor Frankl says, everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, cannot, and that is his freedom to choose. So whatever situation you're in, Viktor Frankl is saying that I don't care what situation you're in, you still have the ultimate control on how you choose. All right. Now there's another videos as far as what are some of the things that get in the way of us making that choice, but that's a whole nother video. And the other thing Viktor Frankl said, he says between stimulus and response, which means between whatever it is that's impacting your life and how you respond to it, there is a space. Okay. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lie our growth and our freedom. And basically he says, it's not what happens to you, it's how you react. All right? So with that understanding, as I'm writing this letter, just remember that we're talking specifically about writing this letter and expressing to my nephew on you want to get out of that mindset that somebody has done something to you and you're telling yourself that you can't move forward because of that. All right? Now, there's something that I learned because when you start thinking of the past, and I went through that stuff, this is why I felt it was important for me to share this with my nephew, is that the understanding, did that person actually take anything from you? And I had to look at that, and as I wrote in the book, at the end of the introductory chapter, I actually wrote a letter expressing that, and a little paragraph or a couple of paragraphs that express that. And what I said is, I forgive all who I perceive to have wronged me. See, I said I forgive. I'm not blaming and saying, hey, I hold you guys all responsible. I said I forgive you because I'm saying you did something that you may not even known you were capable of doing. So I forgive you for that. And then I go on to say, but I will not ask for an apology. Because that would be admitting that they took something from me, which they did not. Okay? In fact, I will humbly thank them for creating a situation in which I've grown immeasurably from, which means you didn't take anything from me. You gave me something. And because you gave me something, I learned from it. Okay? I want you all, and I'm talking to anybody who's reading this or anybody who's going to read the book or read this particular sections, I want you all to be inspired by something other than being backed up against a wall or a situation like I faced in prison. where I'd exhausted all my legal options and or had thought I did. I want you all to be inspired by both a positive opportunity and or the opportunity created from a negative situation. Either way, find your inspiration before it finds you. In a nutshell, whatever happened to me in the past, I forgive them because they know not what they do. They may not have. And I say, no. You didn't take anything from me, because then that would mean you need to give me something back. I said, you gave me something. And what I did with those troubles, those bad thoughts and everything, I turned them around into strength. And that's what I'm sharing with my nephew. You think somebody took something from you, but they actually gave you something. You've chosen not to use it. All right? So back to the points made in the thing. All right. And the other thing is, if you believe they took something from you and they give it back to you, you know what's going to happen? It's not even going to apply, because they took it from a kid. You're an adult now. So you're going to be like, well, I can't do anything with this. Exactly. You're carrying around something you can't even use. All right. So what are we carrying around? Again, backpack. Real quick story. I met these ladies in the airport. They were on this journey. I can't remember what country. I think they were from Australia, but they were journeying Europe and the US before they either went on to college or they went on to graduating from college. I think one was graduating high school and one was graduating college. And they were taking this journey, which is typical of people outside the United States. You take this journey to kind of cleanse yourself. You know, you take this time, this moment. And all they had was a backpack. And they said to me, they're not going to fill that backpack with a bunch of stuff. They're just going to use exactly what they have. They may discard some stuff. They may add a few things, but they're gonna keep this backpack in a balance that they can carry it. I thought that was a great metaphor for life, for situations, for this letter. There's a movie with George Clooney in it called Up in the Air, where he's a motivational speaker, travels all around the country, and he carries a backpack. And he's talking to sales forces that if you want to be better, if you want to improve your sales, life, experiences, there's some baggage that you're carrying around, and you really need to unhook it, look at it, and look and see what's in there that's beneficial, what empowers you, what inspires you, and what you don't need. Get rid of all that stuff, keep the other stuff. And so that's exactly what I took from this conversation with these two girls traveling around the country, is that they're only going to take what they need. They're not going to add around. Now, in one of my other videos, I talk specifically about what I call the dilemma of the poverty conscious. And in that, I make reference to homeless people who are pushing carts, PF Flyer wagons and bikes and dogs and all kind of other stuff that makes their movement, it's so restricted. And I always thought, why, as a homeless person, why do you have that dog? Not only do you got to feed you got to feed that dog. Okay? Why are you pushing around this cart? You not only are homeless, but you can't move. You can't act, and it's mentally, if somebody offers you a place to stay, oh, hold on a second. What am I going to do with my cart? You need to be ready to just move. Boom, boom, boom. Okay? So I like that metaphor I learned from the girls traveling, and I apply that here to my nephew and into my situation. Only carry what you need. We and people in life, we have a lot of unnecessary stuff that we are carrying around. I'm not going to go into more details because I'll probably do another video talking specifically about that. But real quickly, I knew I had that story because I carried around a lot of hatred, resentment for my father because of things that I felt he wasn't doing. So it was very close to me, and I knew that if he continued on that path, he was going to go down, not to say he was going to go to prison, but he was going to go down a path that was very similar to mine, where you're looking around and anytime something goes wrong, you start pointing the finger. It was my dad, it was my mom, it was baseball, it was that one coach, it was this. Man up. All right. So, again, that caused me to have this very destructive journey, and there were points in that journey where things that had to do with my degree as far as me giving it to my dad, and he really didn't do anything with it. So there was a lot of things that I was sharing, in this letter to my nephew. But once we got down to the end and just really understanding is that, look, you're going to be okay. But in order for you to really exercise that being okay, you've got to put some action. You've got to put some action as far as getting rid of some of these bad thoughts, replacing them with better ones, and then putting some action toward it. So my challenge to you, so I'm not going to be too long on this video, is what I asked at the end with my nephew, and I'm now asking my audience, and that is, how do you want the world to remember you? You can pout, you can bitch and moan and complain and everything, but how do you want the world to remember you? Do you want them to remember you as a bitching and moaning, complaining person that could not overcome his environment and situation? Do you want that? Or would you rather be remembered as somebody that, man, that person, in spite of all that, despite of all that, man, that person really made something of himself. Turned out to be a great father, business owner. He went back and graduated from college. He's just doing all kind of great things. And he came from this crazy old environment. People shake their head. They want to talk to you. When you bitch and moan and complain, don't nobody want to help you. But when you pick your ass up and you do something, you are fighting, people will fight with you. People will help you. All right? This is Plan Your Greatness. And thank you guys all for joining. And I'm going to say this again. Plan your greatness. Why? Because no one else will. See you next time.